It seems safe to say that it's been well observed in the YouTube community that Thunderfoot likes to champion a specific type of argument, that is, science, whatever that is, versus religion, whatever that is. I say whatever that is because, unfortunately, these terms are never really fleshed out in detail. Sure, Thunderfoot in this video that I'm responding to defines science via an acronym, PEARL, that is, Physical Evidence and Reasoned Logic, but this is far from a robust method of discovery. For example, the definition of science he gives seems to contain several deficiencies. For example, a priori knowledge does not count as evidence. Science as a method falsely contains, rather than depends, on logic. Empiricism trumps rationalism, and the banner of scientism is flown high without even recourse. I've argued against all these inherent deficiencies elsewhere, but the point here is that we have to comment on method. And the truth is, there is no universally accepted method of the scientific method. Again, for example, consider the following options. Should we as scientists follow the scientific method via inductivism, or should we follow the hypothetical deductive model? Or perhaps even should we follow the eclectic model? There is no ironed out methodology or definition for the scientific method, and this is exemplified from debates that range from whether science should be abductive versus adductive, to disagreements on basic scientific explanations versus covering law and inferential modes of explanation. The point being is that given the lack of consensus, when Thunderfoot states science is diametrically opposed to religion, whatever that is, he needs to be clear as to what specifically via science as a methodology is opposed to religion, whatever that is. But perhaps Thunderfoot's even greater failing is that he throws around the term religion, whatever that is, without definition. Thunderfoot includes in his latest video Norse mythology, Christianity, and Islam together under the umbrella of religion, whatever that is. But what exactly makes these religions? Is it the proposition that there is a God? Well, I think not, for there are multiple ideologies that do not believe in God that are traditionally labeled as religious. For example, some forms of Buddhism and Taoism. Again, obviously, if we wanted to hold religion's defining feature as ascriptions to faith and trust instead of rational evidence as a holistic view, then this includes most, if not all, ideologies, since we cannot prove everything. No, religions are best seen as ideological systems of belief which include scientific statements but are not dominated by them, and this leads us to Thunderfoot's main argument in his video, The Problem with Religion. Let's move to that step by step. Thunderfoot argues that we need predictive models to aid our decision-making, which have utility. Okay, I'll grant the usefulness of science in this respect. What is Thunderfoot's next move? Well, he argues that one method that dominates all others is PEARL, which he includes to be science. It's very successful, Thunderfoot states, for we have many examples of benefits from this method, and he provides several of technology. Lastly, Thunderfoot states one hallmark of this method is convergence, or as he defines it, as more evidence is gathered, it counts for more observation and has more predictable outcomes. So where are we so far in this argument? We have the following claims. 1. Predictive models aids our decision-making. Check. Agreed. 2. The one method that dominates all others is science. Disagree, for while science is very useful in many respects, it cannot dominate ethics, for example. For it cannot even begin to predict ethical decision-making and the oughtness of moral accountability. In this sense, then, science fails in predictive value. Perhaps we should say instead that science is but one tool in our toolbox of many, but it is not the tool for everything. Third claim, convergence is an effective criterion and methods that assist our decision-making again. Check, I agree. So overall, I agree with Thunderfoot's first tier, with the notable exception that I don't adhere to scientism, for it is self-refuting. On the one hand, scientism is not itself a proposition of science, but a philosophy, and on the other hand is very limiting, goodbye ethics and aesthetics. But the next move Thunderfoot makes here, and its subsequent support that he gives, is very logically misconceived. Thunderfoot states that religion, whatever that is diametrically opposite of science, and is a poor model for predictive capabilities. It is divergent, Thunderfoot says, for at the inception of Christianity there was consensus, but then over time we now have thousands upon thousands of sects of Christianity. Thunderfoot estimates 30,000. Moreover, we shouldn't allow these people to be divergent, Thunderfoot argues, because Christianity, now we're picking on a specific label within the wider label, allows for atrocities, for example the flood, or the command to slay thy neighbor. Well, what do we make of this second move, or this second tier? Well, first of all, even if we grant the aforementioned statements and assume that religion is divergent in its methodological sense that Thunderfoot is trying to argue for, merely pointing to a member within the class does not establish the class as divergent. In other words, assuming Christianity is divergent for a moment, the mere fact that it is divergent does not logically lead to the fact that Thunderfoot's poorly defined ideology of religion is divergent. Lest Thunderfoot wished to be guilty of arguing from the fallacy of composition, and I doubt that Thunderfoot does not want to rest his entire case on a fallacy. Second, when Thunderfoot attempts to support his argument that convergence aids decision-making, and that religion, whatever that is, invests its resources into divergence, he leaps to the many denominations within Christianity to try to support this claim. But how, pray tell, does the supposed alleged differing sects of Christianity establish that Christianity is divergent when it comes to decision-making? The very point of what makes science so awesome, supposedly. Based on Thunderfoot's example of convergence, that is, as more evidence is gathered, the more established a theory or tool becomes, the opposite, divergence, would seem to imply that evidence does not establish the theory or method's effectiveness. Okay, so we should expect arguments that suggest that religion, whatever that is being disproved by evidence. Do we get those arguments? No, we don't. We get that there are multiple positions within Christianity. Again, how does this establish religion, whatever that is, as divergent in the methodological sense of decision-making? I could go on. I could talk about the danger of talking about Old Testament ethics without studying the context of these laws. I could talk about quote mining. But I think this suffices for now. Since each religion is best described as a system of beliefs or philosophically a noetic structure or worldview, that each makes separate and distinct claims about reality, then it would seem to be best to treat each of these systems as such, that is, unique claims or noetic structures. We do a disservice to a specific system of thought by lumping them all together at the cost of ignoring their unique claims and then slapping a stamp of divergence on them. Religions, or noetic structures, can be testable by whatever tools are best for the job, whether that be science, history, ethics, or logic, and many of the inherent claims held within those noetic structures do demonstrate convergence. For example, the golden rule in ethics, or the beginning of the universe in cosmology. Life does challenge us to make decisions. Let's begin to answer that challenge first by defining our terms.